Hello, all of my beautiful, brave souls. Today, I have a story from one of our subscribers that I really want to share with you. This is an encounter with an unknown entity, and part of it gets a bit sexually graphic, but I have toned down the language in such a way that you should be able to get the idea without it being offensive. I have changed his name to Jason to protect his identity. As a background, I'm playing some images I've captured of different entities, but today it's all about this story and not about the background. So, Jason's story. The day this event occurred was Monday, October the 30th, 2017, the day before Halloween. I remember it was a Monday because I had stayed up late to watch a movie that I had recorded on my DVR Sunday night. Everything was completely normal when I went to bed at around 1 a.m. Next, I remember waking up with this feeling that someone was looking at me. Then I soon realized that my body was frozen and I could not move anything except my eyes. Now, I'm a fairly strong guy, but no matter how hard I tried to move, I just could not move. From the far side of the room came what looked like a million tiny specks of light that made the shape of a human. The entity that I saw had no recognizable features other than the human shape. It was a normal size compared to a human. Its arms, legs, and head were all proportional to its overall shape. The specks of light that made up this entity were a brilliant blue-silver in color. The lights looked like they were vibrating. The shape of light started towards me and was right over me. I still couldn't move or even scream, and yes, I wanted to scream. I could feel the blanket and sheet being pulled off of me, so I tried to use my fingers to get a hold of them, but I was still paralyzed and I couldn't. After the bedding was completely off, it just stayed above me for what seemed like a long time, but it was only a couple minutes. Next, I could feel my clothing being removed, and I tried to press my body down to stop it, but I couldn't stop it. The next part of this, I'm going to do some censoring, and I'm putting this in third person just in case any children or other sensitive people might be around your video. Jason was terrified and tried looking down to see what they were doing to him, but you see, he couldn't even lift his head off of the pillow to see anything because he was frozen. This entity then proceeded to extract male genetic material from him without any surgical intervention or even physically touching him. He certainly was not aroused, quite the opposite. Now, this last part lasted several minutes before it drifted back across the room and disappeared from sight. Now I'm going back to Jason's account in the first person. After a few minutes, I was able to move and immediately jumped out of bed and turned on the light. Nothing was in the room and the blanket and sheet were on the floor. There was zero genetic material on me or the bed, and that's how I knew they had taken it. Still reeling from what had just happened, I got dressed and got in my car and took off. I just drove around until it was daylight. When I finally returned home, there was no trace of the entity. This happened 5 years ago, and to this day, I still suffer the aftermath of this horrific encounter. The entity didn't make any vocalizations, but it did emit a metallic hum. It also had a smell that was similar to a lilac bush. When I was growing up, we had a lilac bush by our house, and that's what it smelled like. I think that the entity's vibrating was what gave it the ability to extract genetic material without ever touching me. So this concludes Jason's story. Now, I hope you guys will think about some of the cultural issues that surround these alien encrypted encounters. I read an article, I'm going to tell you about it. It was from NBC News. They published an article that was titled, "Space Aliens Are Breeding with Humans, University Instructor Says. Scientists Say Otherwise." It was written by Seth Shostak. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. The beginning of the article seems to be aimed at disproving all of the reported UFO experiences. He made statements such as, "Scientists, of course, are dubious of such claims." The writer even refers to UFO experiences as UFO lore. It's also important to note, in all fairness, that the article was written May the 25th, 2019, before the government released their large cache of UFO documents. 1,574 pages were released to the Sun on April 5th, 2022. In this article, the author states that Young-Hae Chi, I'm not sure if I'm probably butchering his name, I apologize for that, but he teaches Korean at the University of Oxford in England. Okay, not a stupid man. And he says he believes the abductions are real and their purpose is to create alien-human hybrids that are capable of surviving climate change. Lines such as, "Eventually, this weird theory will be vindicated or vanquished by observations," and cheeky, "You might want to check your 23andMe results. Maybe you're already a hybrid." Those kinds of statements really just kind of bring out how many of the organizations that we count on as a society to receive accurate and honest information continue to make a joke out of real and terrifying encounters that people have experienced. This has got to change, guys. This is wrong. I mean, if you think about how Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe, whatever you want to call them, if you think about how the subject has been treated, Steve Ishtal from thefactsbyhowtohunt.com released a document that was provided to him from a nuclear scientist named Edgar Jenkins. In that document, it was a government document, and it instructed government employees to make the topic of Bigfoot a joke to anyone who was reporting an encounter. So how can you and I, as normal, everyday people, trust that the information we are getting is true? I mean, the short answer is we can't. We can only listen to each other, and as Steve Ishtal famously says, take from it what you will and leave the rest. Really, I'm honored that Jason trusted me with his story, and I'm telling you guys, I really believe that this horrible thing happened to him. Now, sometimes it feels good to release this trauma by writing it down. It's a sign that you're no longer going to be bound by the fear. You're not going to be trapped by that fear anymore. You're not going to let it have any power over you. And I tell you, there are many people on YouTube with absolutely amazing voices that read these stories. And if something like this has happened to you, I hope sometime you will consider sending it in to one of them, or even to me in my froggy horse voice. I'm glad to do it. I just think that we really need to talk with one another. We need to tell each other what's happening. Because, I mean, the thing is, we're just never going to get this information unless they're forced to give this information out. There is a channel, if you're interested, on YouTube called Wolfka Outdoors. And they've done this 3-part series on something they call the Zeta aliens. Now, the guy who runs Wolf Guy is a no-nonsense military guy. He seems like he is very genuine, very sincere in the information that he's put out. And these things that he has reported have came from military contacts. So, in this 3-part series, he says that parts 1 and 2 are aimed more towards the researchers, people who are out there gathering up this information and trying to get it out to you guys. But he says the 3rd part is geared more towards the general public. I would have to say that it is pretty darn scary stuff, I gotta be honest. But it is about an alien species called the Zetas. And I'm not going to spoil it for you in case you want to watch it, but I've heard other stories also that are just horrific. I don't know how many of you might remember Bob Lazar. This gentleman worked at, I believe it was what they call Area 53, not Area 51. He said that that's not actually where they keep any of the alien stuff. Area 53, I think, is where he said he worked for a number of years. This man came out and told everybody that there were alien aircraft at Area 53. They were trying to reverse engineer it so that we could learn the technology. During his time there, he saw one of his colleagues vaporized by this unit that was inside of this ship. So he decided that people needed to know. He needed to leave and people needed to know. The government did everything in their power to shut him down. I mean, they froze his bank accounts. They threatened him. They threatened his family. They even went so far as to try to erase him. One person at that facility swiped a phone directory, and it has Bob Lazar's name in that phone directory. But nowhere else on anything in that military base will you ever find Bob Lazar's name, because they tried to erase him for this. He had absolutely nothing good to come of this. This man, you talk about courage. This man has faced down these government allegations. He has sat in front of so many people and given interviews, honest interviews about what was going on there. The one I watched recently was one that he had done with Joe Rogan and someone else. I think it was a filmmaker. I forget his name. But you can find it on, I think, JRE Clips. Bob Lazar is a very intelligent man, and he had nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling his story. But he felt it was that important for everyone to get the honest truth. I hate to sound like one of those conspiracy theorists, they call all this nuts kind of thing, but we have to be able to trust the information that our media and our government is giving to us. And when we find these blatant examples that they have been lying to us, they have been misleading us about all of these things, it makes you really start to listen to what people are telling you, because that's the only place you're going to get the truth. So when someone like Jason tells this story, you know what? He's not the only one. I started looking into it. There was a story of a young woman who was not in any kind of a relationship whatsoever. Woke up one morning and felt like her belly was sticking out like she was 5 months pregnant. Again, she had not been in a relationship in a very long time. She went to work. One of her colleagues asked her about it, one of her friends. Nope, must just be bloated. The next day it was worse. I think it was on the third day that she woke up and found a scar underneath her navel and showed her friend. That mark was completely gone off of her body in a matter of a few days. No mark. So she eventually went to a hypnotherapist to try to get to the bottom of her anxiety. Well, guess what she found out? She found out that she had been abducted and she had been implanted with an alien genetic material. And they had extracted it. That's what came out in her hypnosis session. She would have never been none the wiser to any of this because all of her memory had been wiped of the entire thing. So these kinds of things are happening out there. I'm going to tell you again, I don't fear the Sabe. I think they're just like people. I don't fear the Fae, the others in the other world. Again, you treat them with love and respect and you get it in return. But when it comes to these aliens, all bets are off. Some people say some of them are good. Some people say they're all bad. They're all evil. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I know one thing. I don't trust them. And you know, if I tell you I don't trust them, I got some pretty good reasons for saying I don't trust them. But I do believe Jason's story. I think he was honest about the whole thing. Now look, if nobody today has told you that they love you, I'm telling you straight up right now that I love you. I pray for you guys every single day. And I want you to just feel my arms wrapping around you and giving you a great big hug. You guys stay safe out there. If you need to email me for anything, if you want any photo requests or anything like that, it's IamTeresaCryptid@gmail.com. And I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.